thought I'd seen everything. Found footage from the 1970s. Streamers vanishing mid-broadcast. Photographs where shadows moved on their own. But nothing prepared me for what I found last week. A ham radio operator in rural Montana picked up a signal. It was old, crackling, faint, but clear enough to understand. It was a distress call. From 1944, the voice on the other end was screaming for help, saying his unit was under attack. But here's the thing, the coordinates he gave, they were in the middle of a forest, where no battle ever took place. And when the operator tried to respond, he vanished. Just like Marcus, just like the hikers, just like everyone else who'd heard the silence. The signal wasn't from 1944. It was from somewhere else. And it was still broadcasting. I still remembered the cave where Derek Vance made his deal. I still saw the town that wasn't on any map. I still heard the whisper of that girl in the hospital. I am the silence. And I still had 3 fingers counting down in my nightmares. But now there was something new. A voice from the past that shouldn't exist. A signal that had been broadcasting for 80 years without a single break. I thought the silence was ancient. I thought it had always been there, waiting in the mountains. But this changed everything. Because if the silence was active in 1944, it meant it had been collecting people long before I was born. And it meant it had a plan. It started with a phone call from a woman named Claire. She was the wife of the ham radio operator, a man named Arthur. She said he'd been acting strange for days. He'd locked himself in his shack, refused to eat, refused to sleep. He kept saying he'd heard something that shouldn't exist. I drove to their property in Montana. The shack was small, cluttered with old radios and antennas. Claire led me inside. Arthur was sitting in front of a massive receiver, headphones on, staring at the dials. He didn't acknowledge me. I asked him what he'd heard. He slowly turned his head. His eyes were hollow, red-rimmed. He said, "I picked it up 3 nights ago, at 3:47 a.m. I felt a chill. 3:47. The same time as the first case. The same time Derek Vance had returned from the mountains. Arthur played the recording. It was faint, full of static, but unmistakable. A man's voice, desperate, shouting, "Mayday, Mayday, this is Lieutenant Thomas Reed, 82nd Airborne. We're under attack. Coordinates 45.3, minus 112.8. They're everywhere. Please, anyone, respond. We can't hold out much longer. Mayday." The recording cut off. I asked Arthur if he'd responded. He nodded. He said, "I keyed the mic." I said, "Lieutenant, this is Arthur. What's your location?" And then he heard the voice again. But it wasn't the same. It was calm, quiet. It said, "You answered. Thank you. I've been waiting for someone to answer." Arthur said the line went dead. And then, every night since, he'd been hearing static. Not regular static. It sounded like breathing. I looked up the coordinates. 45.3 north, 112.8 west. It was in a remote area of Montana, near the Idaho border. I checked the historical records. No battle had ever been fought there. No military units had ever been stationed there. But there was something else. A local legend. A story about a group of soldiers who'd gone missing during a training exercise in 1944. They'd been sent into the woods for a routine drill. They never came back. The official report said they'd deserted. But the families always insisted something else had happened. I found an old newspaper article from the time. It said, 7 soldiers vanish without trace. Search parties find nothing. Local residents report hearing strange radio signals in the days following. I printed the article. I read it 3 times. And then I noticed something. At the bottom, there was a photograph. A group of soldiers in uniform, smiling. And standing in the back row, barely visible, was a man in a dark coat. The same dark coat. I'd seen it in the cave. In the films. In the photos. He was there. In 1944. He'd been collecting soldiers even then. I went back to Arthur's shack. But when I arrived, Claire was standing outside, crying. She said, "He's gone. I went to bring him coffee. The door was locked. I broke it open. He wasn't there. The radio was still on. Static. I walked inside. The equipment was still running. The headphones lay on the floor. But Arthur was gone. Just like Marcus. Just like the hikers. I checked the recording equipment. There was a new audio file. Timestamped from 2 hours before I arrived. I played it. It started with static. Then a voice. Not Arthur's. It was the same voice from 1944. Calm. Quiet. It said, "He answered. He joined us. You're next, detective." I felt the blood drain from my face. I checked the logbook. Arthur had been tracking the signal. He'd logged every appearance. The signal came through exactly once every night. At 3:47 a.m. Each time, the voice said something different. The first night, "Mayday, Mayday, this is Lieutenant Thomas Reed." The second, "We're holding, but we need help." The third, "They're getting closer." The fourth, "They're not soldiers. They're shadows." And the last entry from that morning, "He answered. Thank you. We've been so alone." Below it, in Arthur's handwriting, were 3 words. "I have to go." I started digging deeper. I contacted military archives. I found the complete record of the 82nd Airborne's training exercises in 1944. The unit that went missing wasn't just 7 soldiers. It was an entire platoon, 32 men. They'd been sent into the forest for a 2-day drill. They never returned. The army searched for weeks. They found nothing. But there was one document that caught my attention. A confidential report from a Signal Corps officer. He'd been monitoring radio frequencies in the area. He'd picked up a strange signal. He described it as a voice speaking in circles, repeating the same words over and over, like a recording stuck in a loop. He'd tried to trace it. The signal came from somewhere deep in the forest. He led a team to investigate. They found nothing. But the officer, a man named Lieutenant James Corbin, wrote in his report, "I cannot explain what I saw. The trees moved, not in the wind. They moved like they were breathing. And there was a figure in the distance, wearing a coat, watching." Corbin was hospitalized for 3 weeks. He never spoke of it again. He died in 1972, but I found his personal journal in a museum archive. On the last page, he'd written, "The signal is still there. I can hear it if I listen closely. It's waiting. It will never stop waiting." I decided to stay in Arthur's shack that night. I wanted to hear the signal for myself. I set up my own recorder. I sat in the dark, watching the clock. 3:47 a.m. arrived. The static crackled. And then I heard it. A voice. Faint. Distorted. But clear. It said, "Mayday, Mayday, this is Lieutenant Thomas Reed, 82nd Airborne. We're under attack. Coordinates 45.3, minus 112.8. Please respond." I didn't speak. I just listened. The message repeated, over and over. And then, at the end of the loop, there was something new. A whisper, different from the rest. It said, "We know you're listening, detective. We've been waiting for you. Join us. The signal never ends." I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking. I played it back. The whisper was there, clear as day. I analyzed the frequencies. The whisper was coming from a different source. It wasn't part of the 1944 recording. It was live. It was being broadcast from somewhere nearby. I grabbed my flashlight and walked outside. I followed the signal. It grew stronger as I walked deeper into the woods. I walked for 20 minutes. The trees grew denser. The silence grew heavier. And then I saw it. Clearing. In the middle stood a radio tower. Old, rusted, covered in vines. It hadn't been used in decades. But it was active. A red light blinked at the top. I walked closer. At the base of the tower, there was a small metal box. I opened it. Inside was a radio. Old, military issue. It had a label. 82nd Airborne, 1944. I lifted the microphone. I pressed the button. I said, "This is Detective Vance. Is anyone there?" Static. And then, a voice. Not from the radio. From behind me. I spun around. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, wearing a dark coat. He stepped forward. His face was blurred. He said, "You finally found it. The signal. I've been waiting for you to tune in." I asked, "Who are you?" He said, "I am the one who answers. I am the one who collects. I am the silence." The figure didn't move. He just stood there watching me. And then he spoke again. But his voice changed. It became desperate, panicked. It was the voice from the recording. The voice of Lieutenant Thomas Reed. He said, "Please, you have to help us. We've been trapped here since 1944. We tried to leave, but the forest doesn't let us. It moves, it breathes, takes us back. We built the tower. We broadcast every night, hoping someone would hear, hoping someone would come. But no one ever did. Until Arthur. And then you." I asked, "Where are the others?" He pointed to the trees. "They're here. In the shadows. In the leaves. In the silence. They never left. They never will." I looked around. The trees seemed closer. The shadows seemed deeper. And then I heard them. Whispers. Hundreds of them. All saying the same thing. "Join us. Join us. Join us." I backed away. I wanted to run. But the figure stepped closer. He said, "You came here looking for answers. But answers don't exist here. Only questions. And the only way out is to stay." I ran. I ran through the forest, through the darkness until I reached the shack. I slammed the door. I locked it. I sat on the floor, shaking. The radio was still on. Static. I turned it off. I sat in silence. But I could still hear them. The whispers. The breathing. The signal. It was inside my head now. It would never leave. If this recording is ever found, I hope someone remembers what I found. The signal isn't just a recording. It's a door. And once you answer, you can't close it. If you're hearing this, don't respond. Don't answer. Don't listen to the voice. Because once you do, it already knows your name. And it will never stop calling. I don't know if I'll ever be free of it. But I know one thing for certain. The silence has been waiting for 80 years. It will wait 80 more. And one day, someone else will find that tower. Someone else will hear that signal. And they will make the same mistake I did. They will answer. In the next episode, I'll tell you what I found in the basement of that radio tower. But that's a story for another time. Just waiting for you. If you want to see what happened next, look for the next episode on this channel. It's already waiting.